Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a truly fascinating journey into the polarizing, highly misunderstood, yet honestly, biologically incredible world of a traditional Japanese superfood. We're going to look right past the myths and dig straight into the microscopic miracles happening inside this totally unique dish. Get ready, because your perspective is about to be completely changed.
Now, if you've ever actually encountered natto in the wild, you already know its reputation, right? It's infamous. We're talking about an incredibly slimy, sticky texture that literally forms these long strings when you pull it apart. And then there's that pungent, earthy smell that a lot of people find, well, let's just say challenging. Honestly, historically, it was even known as the stinky bean in Chinese folk traditions. But what if I told you that this exact same sticky mucus and strong aroma are the literal sources of some of the most profound health benefits found in any food on Earth? No joke.
Okay, let's really dive into this. Picture the number 84. According to the World Health Organization, 84 years is the average life expectancy in Japan. That makes it the longest-lived country in the entire world. And sure, there are absolutely a ton of factors at play there, but researchers and nutritionists heavily point to their daily consumption of natto. I mean, there's literally a popular phrase in Japan that goes, "Eat natto every meal, live up to 99." It's that ingrained in the culture.
To understand why this sticky bean is an absolute nutritional powerhouse, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the controversial superfood natto. Then, natto bacteria and the gut. Next up, natto kinase and cardiovascular health. Fourth, vitamin K2's dual role. And finally, we'll talk about embracing natto's extreme charm. Section 1. Controversial superfood natto. So, soybeans and rice cultivation first arrived in Japan way back around 300 BC. But the real magic? That happened much later, around the 1080s. Legend actually has it that the samurai lord Minamoto no Yoshie was boiling soybeans to feed his horses during a military campaign. They got ambushed, quickly packed the warm beans into rice straw bags, and just fled. Days later, they finally opened the bags only to find the beans had fermented. They fermented from the bacteria naturally living right there on the rice straw. Crazy, right? Fast forward to 1980, Dr. Hiroyuki Sumi discovers a miraculous enzyme in the dish, and today we've totally moved from accidental straw fermentation to precise, scientifically controlled factory production using purified cultures.
Section 2. Natto bacteria and gut.
All right, let's meet the absolute hero of our story, Bacillus subtilis natto. The entire fermentation of natto relies on just this one single type of bacterium. And what makes it so incredibly special for our gut health is its ability to form endogenous spores. You can think of these spores as microscopic armor. Whenever the environment gets tough, we're talking exposure to high heat, extreme pressure, or highly acidic conditions, this bacterium literally shields itself. It enters this metabolically inactive state until it reaches a safe, cozy environment to wake up and thrive again.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why that microscopic armor matters so much for your actual health. A lot of people take standard probiotic supplements, right? Like lactic acid bacteria, hoping to fix their gut flora. But here's the catch. In clinical simulations that replicate the highly acidic pH 1.2 environment of our own stomachs, those standard bacteria, they're completely wiped out. Just gone. But in stark contrast, the spores of Bacillus subtilis natto boast an almost 100% survival rate. They just breeze right through that harsh stomach acid and arrive in your intestines entirely alive and totally ready to get to work. So once it arrives alive in your gut, it kicks off this truly remarkable chain reaction. It acts as an environmental stabilizer for your whole digestive system. It starts secreting these enzymes that break down complex dietary carbohydrates and proteins, and it even converts starches into simple sugars. Now you might be wondering, why does that matter? Well, because those sugars literally feed the good lactic acid and bifidobacteria that are already hanging out in your gut, causing them to rapidly multiply. And while it's doing all that, it's also producing antimicrobial substances that actively fight off harmful rotting pathogens and fungi. It's basically like having a microscopic landscaping crew for your gastrointestinal tract.
Moving on to Section 3, natto kinase and cardiovascular health.
Remember that sticky, stringy mucus that covers the natto beans we talked about earlier? Well, that is exactly where Dr. Sumi discovered natto kinase back in the 1980s. Natto kinase is an alkaline serine protease enzyme. I know, that sounds super technical, but in plain English, it is a highly potent thrombolytic agent, which simply means it is an absolute master at dissolving blood clots. The precise biochemistry of how it safely does this is just mind-blowing.
Nattokinase essentially acts as a vascular plumber, and it uses 4 distinct pathways to clear things out. First off, it directly dissolves cross-linked fibrin. That's the main structural mesh that holds a blood clot together. But here's the kicker. It does this without depleting your plasma fibrinogen. That means it doesn't cause the dangerous bleeding risks that are usually associated with traditional clot-busting drugs. Plus, it actually stimulates your own body to produce more TPA, converts pro-urokinase to active urokinase, and completely degrades the inhibitors that try to block your natural clot-dissolving systems. It's literally comprehensively upgrading your body's own ability to keep your blood vessels clear.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that this isn't just some theoretical biology experiment. It has profound real-world clinical impacts. Studies have actually shown that taking high doses of Natto can effectively halt the progression of atherosclerosis. It literally reduces the thickness of the carotid artery walls and shrinks the size of plaque. Let that sink in. We are talking about a naturally fermented food component visibly reversing cardiovascular disease markers and lowering blood pressure. That is huge.
Section 4. Vitamin K2's dual role.
Get this, Natto contains over 100 times the vitamin K2 concentration of standard cheeses. 100 times. It is by far the absolute richest natural dietary source of vitamin K2 on the entire planet, specifically a highly bioavailable form known as MK7. But what does this massive, superdosed payload of K2 actually do for us?
Well, to really understand K2, you have to meet something called matrix GLA protein, or MGP for short. MGP is a protein that just kind of hangs out in your arterial walls, but normally it's completely inactive. It's just sleeping. It actually requires vitamin K2 to be turned on. Once it's finally activated by K2, MGP becomes a powerhouse. It acts as a powerful inhibitor of arterial calcification. Basically, it binds to any excess calcium floating around in your blood vessels and just clears it right out, totally preventing your arteries from hardening into rigid, dangerous pipes.
Let's look at how this builds a complete, elegant system for calcium management in your body. Think of vitamin K2 as a biological traffic cop for calcium. In the arteries, as we just saw, it activates MGP to actively pull calcium out of the blood vessels, which is fantastic for preventing cardiovascular disease. But simultaneously, over in the bones, it's activating another protein called osteocalcin. And this activated osteocalcin acts like a magnet. It grabs that exact same calcium and binds it directly into your bone matrix. This increases your bone density and helps prevent osteoporosis. So it literally takes calcium from where it's dangerous, your heart, and deposits it exactly where it's vital, your skeleton. It's brilliant.
Now, I do want to pause right here for a quick, strictly clinical precaution that's absolutely crucial to know. Because vitamin K2 plays such a foundational, structural role in blood coagulation pathways in the liver, it directly antagonizes the anticoagulant medication warfarin. So this means if a patient is actively prescribed warfarin, medical professionals strongly advise them to avoid eating whole natto altogether. Safety first, always.
And finally, Section 5, embrace natto's extreme charm.
So beyond the highly specialized enzymes and vitamins we just covered, a standard 100-gram serving of natto is just an absolute staggering nutritional workhorse. You are getting roughly 19 grams of highly bioavailable plant protein. You're getting a massive 5.4 grams of dietary fiber, which remember is fantastic for that gut motility we talked about earlier. Plus, you get up to 108% of your daily iron and a really solid dose of calcium. And as we just learned, that calcium pairs perfectly with all that vitamin K2 to build those strong bones. It is the whole shebang.
But okay, of course we have to address the elephant in the room, the smell. The actual science behind the stink breaks down into a couple of key factors. The ammonia odor, that just comes from standard protein decomposition during fermentation. However, that true, intensely pungent aroma everyone talks about actually comes from branched-chain short fatty acids, or BCFAs. But listen, here is the really great news for anyone who might be totally intimidated by the smell. Scientists have recently bred new, low-odor strains of the natto bacteria. They did this by naturally suppressing the specific LDH genes that are responsible for those fatty acids. So these modern, mild-aroma natto products have dropped those stinky BCFAs from 70.7 milligrams down to just 0.7 milligrams. It's practically a game changer, making this incredible superfood infinitely more accessible to global palates.
We have seen how a single, resilient bacterium can survive the absolute harshest environments just to reach and rebuild your gut flora. We've seen how it secretes enzymes that can literally physically clear out your arteries. And we've seen how its massive dose of vitamin K2 acts as the ultimate traffic cop, actively protecting your cardiovascular system while simultaneously fortifying your bones. So, considering the immense, scientifically proven biological power contained in every single bite, will you let a little sticky texture stand between you and the ultimate microscopic superfood? Seriously, think about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.